I'm interviewing Jo Noero of Noero Wolf Architects. Jo, you recently won the Lupitkin Prize, awarded by RIBA, the Royal Institute of British Architects, for the most outstanding work of architecture outside the UK and EU. This international award was for your Red Location Museum. Can you tell me about the experience?
The experience of getting the award?
Of winning the award, yeah.
It was great. It came completely out of the blue. I'm an honorary fellow of the RIBA, and they asked me to submit the building for consideration, and it was a real pleasure to know that this little building in the middle of nowhere, which really Port Elizabeth is in many people's minds, would be given that kind of recognition. The buildings we were up in competition against were huge buildings done by some of the most illustrious architects in the world, ranging from Daniel Lipskin to Zaha Hadid. And our little building, we were competing with buildings, for example, like the Canadian Museum of War, which translated into South African rands cost in the order of over 1,000 million rand. Our tiny little building cost 20 million rand. So it was a little speck in the ocean. But what was great was that the RIBA panel of assessors thought it was a good building. So they gave us the award.
That's excellent. So as such, you have achieved an inordinate level of success, taking quintessentially South African architecture into the global realm, without adhering to a bland international aesthetic or order, but having a strong reference to the context of the building. Is this a specific design intent for you in all your designs? And if so, how do you go about achieving it?
I think that the thing that marked the museum as a special building was, first of all, it's the first big building that I've done. I mean, most of my other work has been quite small work, and it was a building that had an ambitious program, which was to build a museum at a site of struggle, which is actually a shack settlement, in order to remember through some kind of extraordinary device, architectural device, the past. And that sets in place a whole lot of wonderful possibilities. But the work that my practice has always been involved in has been always involved in trying to sort of find a way of giving an expression to what South African architecture might be like. And I think that the early work was characterized by a very rigorous, kind of almost functionalist approach to architecture and structure and cladding. But since 1994, with the advent of democracy, I think it's loosened up. But it's an evolving thing. And I think that as the country becomes more democratized and as people find their voice in stronger and stronger ways, the work's going to respond to that. I think architecture work's always got to respond to something that's pre-existing rather than impose an idea on top of what is existing. So in a way, we're just trying to draw out of...
Read it. Okay. Your concept of memory boxes in the Red Location Museum has such strength and clarity. Do you always try and identify a central concept for a project, and how ardently do you stick to it throughout the design process?
I think that you could say that that is a characteristic of the work that I do, is that I work very hard to try and find some kind of essential idea, and then work with that idea as a kind of central motif of the work. It's interesting because I've always found it very easy to use language, to describe an intention. So I think that narrative and the use of words becomes very important in the shaping of architectural concepts. I do it that way rather than make drawings. I'd rather sort of talk about the ideas and then use the narrative as a generator for the architectural form. So in a way, the memory box becomes an almost perfect representation of that.
Yeah, that's great. Can you tell me a bit about your early career, the highs, lows, and the lessons learned?
I started architecture as a mature student because I studied medicine first and didn't enjoy that, so dropped out of that. But I was very fortunate because my early career I taught. I got a scholarship to study in England and went and spent 2 years there, returned to South in the early 80s and got offered a job by Punch Getters and Fitz. And what Pancho's view was is that he said you can either become an architect by working for someone else, or you become an architect by working for yourself. If you don't have rich parents, then you have to have a second job.
Yeah.
I didn't have rich parents, so he suggested to come and teach with me at Wits, and at least you'll have an income and then you can run your practice. So in a way, I don't have any ups and downs. It's just been absolutely great. I started off doing very small buildings. I'm now in my mid-50s and consider myself to be mid-career, and I'm starting to get bigger work.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that my advice to young architects would be is not to try and strike out too quick, too fast, too big.
Okay.
To just start off slowly, do small work, and gradually build up towards, when you get to your 50s, doing more complex work.
Yeah.
And
Okay. And what is the driving force behind your success? Is it within architecture itself, or is it a broader approach to life?
no, I think I've got like 2 or 3 interests in life, one of which is my family, and the second one which is architecture.
Okay. It's very specific. Well, Jo, congratulations on your success, and thank you very much for your time. I appreciated the insights. Thank you.
Thank you. Great.